A little girl made a simple birthday wish. She wanted her school teacher to come to her party. Her millionaire father agreed, thinking it would be just another guest. But the moment he opened the door and met her teacher for the first time, something unexpected happened. A meeting that was supposed to last a few minutes started changing 3 lives forever. How did a birthday wish turn a lonely father, a kind teacher, and a little girl into a family? Stay with me until the end, because this story proves that sometimes love arrives in the most unexpected ways. Thank you for listening to this heartfelt story. If it moved you, share it, comments below, and let someone know you are never alone. I built my life like a fortress. Steel company, wide ranch land beyond the city, money, silence, responsibility. Inside that fortress lived only 2 souls, my daughter and me. Her laughter filled halls that once echoed with grief. Every evening she ran toward me after school, stories spilling like sunlight. One name returned again and again. Her teacher, Miss Elena. Warm voice, gentle patience, kind eyes that listened to a child as if every word carried weight. Her birthday arrived with pink ribbons and wild excitement. She tugged my sleeve. Papa, one wish. Bright eyes, serious voice. I want Miss Elena here. A strange pause settled inside my chest. A teacher stepping into my private world felt unfamiliar. Evening arrived. Golden sunset across the ranch fields. Wind brushing tall grass like whispering silk. Then the door opened, and the room shifted. She stood there quietly. Simple dress, soft smile, eyes filled with warmth that reached my daughter first. My daughter ran into her arms. Joy burst across that small living room. Cake candles glowing, laughter rising. I watched from across the table. Something inside me stirred. For years my heart carried heavy walls, business deals, lonely dinners, a child growing without a mother. Then Elena spoke gently with my daughter about courage, kindness, hope. Every word carried calm strength. A teacher with patience, a woman with quiet resilience. My daughter leaned against her shoulder like a traveler reaching home. A sudden realization struck me like thunder across clear sky. Shock spread through my chest. The answer had stood beside my child all along. The woman who already held her trust. The woman whose presence warmed every corner of the room. I stepped closer, heart beating harder than any business negotiation. And as the candles flickered against her face, I finally understood why my daughter's small voice carried such certainty when she whispered that Elena belonged here. Because in that fragile, glowing moment I saw the future forming in front of me, and I heard my daughter laugh again while Elena turned toward me with calm eyes, and I began to speak about family and hope and the long empty years behind us while the wind moved softly through the open window and the night air carried the scent of wild grass across the ranch, and Elena listened with quiet understanding as my daughter reached for both of our hands and placed them together on the table, while the last candle flame trembled and my heart moved toward a promise that had waited many years, and my voice lowered as I told Elena that a child's wisdom often sees truth before adults understand it, and that inside this house lived 2 people searching for warmth and guidance. And that perhaps fate brought her across our path because my daughter already trusted her with every small dream and fear. And as I lifted my eyes toward her gentle expression, I felt the strange, powerful certainty that life prepared a new beginning, and the words forming on my lips began to shape a question about staying here with us, about becoming the steady light my daughter already followed as the candlelight shimmered between us and the room held its breath while Elena slowly reached across the table and our fingers touched for the first time, and in that quiet, fragile second the future opened like a wide frontier waiting for 3 hearts to step forward, and I felt my daughter squeeze our hands together again as Elena drew a slow breath and began to tell me about her own lonely road and the reasons that brought her into teaching and the silent promise she made to guide children through storms. And I leaned closer, listening to every word while the house filled with warmth and the night deepened outside, and Elena's voice softened as she spoke about family and belonging and the possibility that sometimes destiny arrives through a child's simple birthday wish. And my daughter looked between us with shining eyes as Elena's hand remained inside mine, and the quiet promise growing between us began to take shape while the candle finally faded and Elena turned toward me and whispered something that made my heart rise with sudden hope, and I answered her with a truth I carried for years. about love and redemption and the life waiting ahead for all three of us. As the wind brushed the window again and Elena stepped closer toward me while my daughter smiled brightly, and the next words formed slowly between us as Elena lifted her eyes and said she felt something changing in this house tonight, and I felt the same powerful pull as I told her that my daughter already chose her place in our lives and that perhaps the frontier of our future began at this very table. While Elena's fingers tightened gently around mine and she leaned forward to speak again about the road ahead and the promise growing between us, and the moment stretched quietly as her voice softened, and she began to say that maybe she already felt at home here with us, and that the life waiting outside that door might begin tonight if two hearts dared to walk toward it together. And I listened closely as her next words began to unfold, and my daughter held our hands together with quiet certainty, and Elena drew another breath before telling me the truth she carried in her heart about us and about the future that waited just beyond this fragile, beautiful moment where everything in my life started to change. And her voice continued softly while the wind carried the scent of distant fields into the room, and she began to tell me how long she watched my daughter grow stronger each day, and how deeply she cared for her happiness, and how the warmth inside this home awakened a longing inside her that she never expected. And as her words continued to unfold, I felt the final walls around my heart slowly fall while my daughter looked at us with peaceful confidence, and Elena leaned closer, as if ready to reveal the next promise that would shape the life waiting for us just beyond this glowing, fragile birthday night. And she opened her lips again to tell me what her heart truly desired as the quiet room listened and the future waited just one breath away. And she said that if I truly wished for her to stay beside my daughter and guide her through every tomorrow, then perhaps we should begin by taking one small step together into the unknown path that started right here. As our hands remained joined on the table, and the warm night air moved through the room, and Elena continued speaking gently about hope and family, and the new life that slowly formed between us, while my daughter smiled brighter than the candles ever shone, and Elena's voice carried forward with a promise that began to reshape everything I believed about love and belonging. As the night deepened and her story about her own past began to unfold right there in our quiet home where three lives were already beginning to weave together, and she continued explaining how destiny sometimes waits patiently until the right moment appears, and that moment stood before us now while her hand remained warm in mine, and her next words started to reveal the choice that would guide our future. And I listened as she leaned even closer, ready to share the final truth growing inside her heart about becoming part of our family and the life we might build together, starting from this very night when my daughter's birthday wish opened a door none of us ever expected. And Elena's voice lowered as she prepared to speak the words that would change everything for us, while the wind outside carried the promise of a new dawn across the wide open fields, and I waited for her next breath as her fingers gently tightened around mine, and she began to say that from the first day she met my daughter, she felt a connection deeper than simple teaching, and that tonight she finally understood why fate guided her here. And as she spoke, my daughter squeezed our hands again, and Elena's eyes lifted toward mine with quiet courage as she continued telling me about the family she dreamed of building, and how that dream slowly formed in this very moment while the warm night surrounded us. And her voice moved forward, ready to reveal the next step in the journey that had only just begun between us, and her voice trembled with quiet courage. Soft, honest, full of warmth that reached straight into my guarded heart. The room felt smaller, closer. Every breath carried the scent of birthday cake and summer wind drifting through the open window. My daughter watched us with shining eyes, hope glowing brighter than the candles that once burned on the cake. Elena spoke again. Slow words, gentle truth. She shared the story of her own lonely childhood. Small house, hard winters, a mother with a tired soul yet endless kindness. Teaching became her promise to the world, a promise to protect small hearts, a promise to guide children through storms of fear and doubt. Her hand remained inside mine, warm, steady, alive with quiet strength. My heart beat harder with every word she offered. Years of wealth and success suddenly felt empty beside the simple honesty shining in her eyes. I looked toward my daughter. She leaned against Elena's shoulder again, peaceful, safe, as if she already knew where her home truly belonged. A sudden wave of emotion rose through my chest. Heavy memories, long nights alone after my wife passed away, silent dinners across a wide empty table. Yet tonight felt different. The house breathed again. Laughter lingered in the air. Warmth wrapped around every corner of the room. Elena lifted her gaze toward me, curious, hopeful, careful with the fragile moment growing between us. Outside, the ranch stretched into darkness. Endless land, endless possibilities, a frontier of new beginnings. I felt the strange, beautiful truth forming inside my chest. My daughter had already chosen her guide, her protector, her light. Now my own heart slowly followed the same path. I stepped closer, close enough to hear Elena's quiet breathing, close enough to see the kindness living inside her eyes. My voice lowered as I spoke about family, about building a home filled with patience and understanding, a place where wounds from the past slowly heal. Elena listened carefully. Her fingers tightened gently around mine. Then she leaned forward slightly, as if preparing to reveal something deeper. My daughter watched the moment unfold with silent excitement. The wind outside brushed across the tall grass again, a soft whisper across the wide land. Elena drew a slow breath. Her voice softened further. She began telling me about the quiet feelings that grew inside her every time my daughter spoke about home, about the ranch, about the father who worked endlessly yet loved with all his strength. Her words carried tenderness, understanding, a sincerity that felt rare in this world. I felt my heart open another inch, the fortress around my life slowly crumbling. Elena stepped a little closer, close enough for our shoulders to almost touch. Her eyes searched mine carefully, and she continued speaking about the future, about the possibility of guiding my daughter through every year ahead, about building trust step by step, about the strange, beautiful hope that maybe this birthday night marked the beginning of something far greater than any of us expected. As she slowly lifted her hand toward my daughter's hair, and gently brushed it back while looking into my eyes again and explaining that sometimes destiny chooses the quietest moments to change 3 lives at once, and that this house already felt warmer than any place she remembered, and that perhaps the road ahead waited for all of us together if courage allowed us to keep walking forward. And as her voice continued softly through the warm evening air, I realized the next words forming in her heart carried a promise neither of us fully understood yet, and she began to tell me what she truly felt when she first stepped through my door tonight, and how that feeling grew stronger with every passing second while my daughter listened quietly between us, and Elena leaned even closer, preparing to reveal the deeper truth that had been waiting inside her all along. And she opened her lips to say something that made the air feel suddenly heavier, quiet, tender, fragile like the final flame of a candle. Her eyes searched mine, deep brown, honest, carrying a warmth I felt straight in my chest. My heart felt peace here tonight. Simple words, yet they echoed through the room like distant thunder rolling across open land. My daughter squeezed our hands again, a small bridge between 2 adults standing on uncertain ground. Outside, the wind moved slowly through the tall grass of the ranch. Silver moonlight stretched across the fields, a frontier of quiet possibilities. Elena continued speaking, soft voice, careful honesty. She told me that the moment she stepped through my door she sensed something rare inside this house. Not wealth, not comfort, something deeper. A father carrying silent pain, a child growing strong through love alone, and a space waiting for warmth. Her fingers moved gently within my hand, a small motion, yet powerful enough to send a strange warmth through my guarded heart. I felt the walls inside me weaken again. Years of responsibility, years of strength, years of lonely evenings beside the window watching endless land stretch into darkness. Elena's voice drew me back. She spoke about courage, about building trust slowly, about how a child's heart sometimes sees truth long before adults understand it. My daughter smiled quietly between us, her small face glowing with certainty, as if this moment had always been part of her secret plan. Elena stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her presence beside me. Her eyes lifted toward the wide window where the moonlight spilled across the wooden floor. Then she spoke again. "I feel something beginning tonight." Those words stirred something powerful inside my chest. Hope, fear, a fragile dream rising from the ashes of old memories. The night seemed to pause around us. Even the wind outside softened. Elena turned toward my daughter and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. Protective, natural, almost instinctive. Then she looked back at me, that same quiet courage in her eyes. She spoke about guiding my daughter through school years, through doubts and growing dreams, through every challenge waiting ahead. Her voice carried devotion, the kind of devotion money never buys. My daughter leaned against her again, comfortable, safe, Watching them together sent a sudden shock through my heart, a realization so powerful it left me breathless. This woman already belonged in our lives. Perhaps she always had. I took a slow step closer. Our hands still joined. My voice lowered as I began telling her about the empty years behind me, about the struggle of raising a child alone while building an empire that often felt meaningless once the office lights faded and the house fell silent at night. And as my words continued, Elena listened with deep understanding and her eyes softened with compassion while my daughter remained between us holding both our hands together, and Elena slowly nodded as if recognizing every piece of that loneliness before speaking again about the future that might slowly grow here if three hearts chose to walk the same path. And as she spoke those words, the warm night air drifted through the open window again, carrying the scent of distant fields, and Elena's voice continued gently describing the life she imagined inside this home where kindness guided every step and patience shaped every lesson and love quietly filled the spaces once touched by sorrow. And while she spoke, I felt something shift deeply within my soul as Elena lifted her eyes toward me again and began revealing the feeling that had grown inside her since the first moment my daughter spoke proudly about her father and the ranch and the strength she admired in him, and Elena leaned slightly closer, ready to confess the deeper truth that had taken root in her heart tonight, while my daughter watched with silent excitement, and the moonlight shimmered across the room, and Elena finally gathered the courage to continue explaining what she truly felt about the bond forming between the three of us and how that bond might become something far greater than simple friendship. As her fingers gently tightened around mine and she drew another quiet breath before speaking again about the life that might begin right here in this quiet house where three lonely paths had finally crossed, and she slowly began to reveal the promise waiting inside her heart while the night listened carefully, and my daughter's hopeful eyes moved between us as Elena leaned even closer and her voice softened again as she prepared to tell me the next truth that would guide the future unfolding between us. Her voice softened again as she prepared to tell me the next truth, growing quietly inside her heart. The room held a deep stillness. Moonlight stretched across the wooden floor. The wind outside whispered through the long grass of the ranch. Elena looked at my daughter first. A tender smile touched her face. Gentle, protective. Then her eyes returned to mine. Steady, brave, full of quiet understanding. "I see a family here," she said softly. The word struck me like a sudden flash of lightning across a calm sky. For a moment my breath slowed. My chest tightened with emotion I had buried for many years. My daughter's fingers wrapped around our hands again, a small heartbeat connecting three lives. Elena continued speaking. Careful words, honest feelings unfolding one piece at a time. She explained how every story my daughter shared about home carried warmth and strength. A father who worked tirelessly, a man who built success yet protected his child with gentle devotion. Listening to those stories planted something inside her heart. Curiosity at first, then admiration. Tonight that quiet curiosity transformed into something deeper as she stepped through my door and felt the life inside this home. The laughter, the kindness, the space where love once lived and waited patiently to grow again. Her hand tightened softly around mine. Warm, certain. My heart beat harder with every word she spoke. Years of loneliness felt suddenly visible beneath the calm surface of my life. Elena seemed to understand that pain without a single question. She moved closer beside me, close enough that our shoulders nearly touched. My daughter leaned happily against her arm, a peaceful image that stirred something powerful inside my chest. Elena lowered her voice again. "If two people choose courage, a child receives the world." The truth inside those words echoed deeply within me. Outside, the wide ranch stretched endlessly under silver moonlight, land waiting for new footsteps, new laughter, new memories, a frontier of possibility. I slowly spoke about the long road behind me, loss, responsibility, the quiet fear of opening my heart again. Elena listened with patient understanding. Her eyes softened. Then she spoke about redemption, about how wounded hearts sometimes discover strength through caring for others. My daughter looked between us with shining hope, as if she already believed the future had chosen its direction. The night air moved gently through the open window again. Elena brushed a loose strand of hair from my daughter's face. A simple gesture, yet it carried the warmth of a mother's touch. That sight stirred a sudden realization deep inside me, a truth impossible to ignore. I stepped closer. Our joined hands rested on the table between us. The quiet moment stretched longer. Then Elena drew another slow breath and began speaking again about the dream slowly forming in her heart since tonight began, and how that dream involved guiding my daughter through every lesson life offered while standing beside the father who carried such strength and quiet kindness. And as she spoke, her voice filled with warmth and courage while the moonlight brightened across the room, and my daughter listened eagerly between us, and Elena continued describing the life she imagined growing here, with patience and love shaping each day, and the loneliness of the past slowly fading into distant memory, while the ranch filled with laughter and shared mornings and peaceful evenings. And as her words flowed forward, I felt my heart opening wider than it had in years, and Elena leaned even closer while revealing that the feeling guiding her tonight carried a certainty she had never experienced before, and she gently lifted our joined hands slightly from the table while my daughter watched with glowing excitement, and Elena began explaining that sometimes destiny arrives quietly through the innocence of a child's wish, and tonight that wish created a path none of us expected. And she looked into my eyes with calm bravery, and continued telling me that the future forming between us might hold more beauty than either of us imagined if we allowed our hearts to walk forward together. And as the wind brushed softly against the window again, Elena prepared to reveal the next step she believed waited for us beyond this fragile moment where 3 lives had finally begun to weave together, and she leaned closer, ready to share the promise growing inside her heart, as my daughter held our hands tightly, and Elena opened her lips again to say. She opened her lips again to say the words that had been quietly growing inside her heart. The moment felt fragile. Moonlight rested on the table. The wind moved softly across the ranch outside. My daughter watched us with bright, patient eyes. Elena drew a slow breath. Her voice came gently, warm, honest, full of quiet courage. Tonight feels like the beginning of something beautiful. The sentence settled deeply inside me. Not loud, not dramatic, yet powerful enough to shake the lonely walls I built around my life. My daughter smiled wider. Her small fingers tightened around both our hands, a silent promise forming between 3 hearts. Elena continued speaking carefully. She spoke about mornings filled with laughter before school, about patient evenings helping with homework at the long wooden table, about guiding a young girl toward confidence and kindness. Her words painted a life that felt peaceful, simple, true, full of warmth. I listened quietly. For the first time in many years, the future appeared bright instead of distant. The ranch outside stretched endlessly beneath the silver sky, wide land waiting for footsteps, waiting for voices, waiting for life. Elena slowly turned toward my daughter and gently placed a hand over her small shoulder. A natural gesture, the kind that carried care without effort. My daughter leaned closer against her side with perfect comfort. That sight filled my chest with emotion I struggled to describe. Hope mixed with gratitude, surprise mixed with wonder. Elena lifted her eyes toward me again. Soft determination lived there now. She spoke about patience, about building trust day by day, about allowing love to grow slowly like the tall grass across the frontier fields. The wind outside whispered again through those distant fields, as if the land itself listened to our conversation. I stepped a little closer, our hands still joined. My voice lowered as I thanked her for the kindness she had already given my daughter, the long hours of care, the quiet encouragement that helped a child grow strong. Elena's smile deepened slightly. Then she revealed another piece of her heart. She explained how the connection she felt with my daughter had slowly changed something inside her own life. Teaching became more than a profession. It became a calling to protect a bright young soul who reminded her that kindness still shaped the world. My daughter squeezed our hands again. A tiny laugh escaped her lips, joy shining across her face like sunrise across open land. Elena watched that laughter with deep affection. Then she leaned slightly closer to me again. The warmth of her presence filled the quiet space between us. She spoke about courage once more, about how sometimes the greatest journeys begin with one small step forward. Her words carried calm strength, the kind that heals old wounds. The night air drifted through the window again, cool, fresh, filled with the scent of distant fields and earth. Elena's voice softened as she continued sharing the dream slowly forming inside her heart tonight, and how that dream involved more than simply guiding my daughter through school years but also standing beside the man who raised her with such devotion and courage. And she described how the warmth she felt inside this home made her believe that a deeper bond might grow here if we allowed time and trust to shape it gently, and as she spoke her fingers tightened slightly, around mine while my daughter looked between us with shining excitement, and Elena continued explaining how the future she imagined included laughter filling these wide rooms and peaceful mornings across the ranch, and evenings where stories and understanding replaced the silence of past years. And her voice grew steadier as she described the possibility of building a true family from the fragile beginning forming tonight, while the moonlight brightened across the floor and the wind outside brushed softly against the tall grass, and Elena leaned closer again as if ready to reveal the final thought she carried deep inside her heart about what this moment truly meant for all three of us, and how the simple birthday wish of a child had opened a path none of us expected. And as her eyes met mine again, she prepared to share the next promise, slowly rising between us while my daughter held our hands together with joyful certainty, and Elena drew another calm breath before speaking the next words that would guide our lives further into the unknown future waiting just beyond this quiet, beautiful night. As she gently lifted her gaze and began to say, Elena drew one final breath. The quiet room waited. Moonlight still touched the floor. The wind still wandered through the fields beyond the ranch. My daughter held our hands together, a small bridge of hope. Elena's eyes met mine with calm certainty. Family begins with kindness, she said softly. Those words carried a deep truth. For years I believed strength meant standing alone, building success, protecting my daughter with walls made of silence and work. Yet tonight revealed another kind of strength, the strength to open a wounded heart, the courage to welcome warmth again. My daughter looked up at us both with quiet joy. Elena knelt beside her, gentle hands brushing her hair, a tender smile that already felt like home. The moment felt clear. No confusion, no fear, only a peaceful understanding growing between three souls. I looked across the wide ranch through the open window. The land stretched endlessly beneath the stars. For years that land symbolized loneliness and responsibility. Tonight it looked different. It looked like possibility. I slowly wrapped my arm around my daughter and reached for Elena's hand again. Warm fingers met mine. Simple, sincere, full of promise. We stood there together beside the table where birthday candles once burned. Three hearts connected by a child's honest wish. Life rarely changes through grand miracles. Often change begins through small moments. A conversation, a gentle gesture, a brave decision to care for another person's pain. Elena looked at both of us and smiled softly. The future waited outside those doors. Not perfect, not easy, yet filled with kindness and shared strength. And in that quiet house beneath the wide frontier sky, I finally understood the greatest lesson life offered. Wealth builds houses, but compassion builds homes. True family forms when people choose patience, understanding, and love over fear and loneliness. Sometimes the purest wisdom comes from the smallest voice. A child who believes in goodness. A child who trusts the kindness of others. My daughter's simple birthday wish opened a door none of us expected. Through that door stepped healing, hope, and the beginning of a family built on trust and sincere hearts. Because in every hard season of life there are always people with gentle souls ready to share the weight of sorrow and transform it into something beautiful, if only someone finds the courage to welcome them inside.